We are opening up the mailbag on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, February 10th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And shout out to every day who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. And as of right now, we are one sleep away from the men's tournament going on in Milano Cortina. So there's a few Olympic questions here for our mailbag edition, but obviously there's still conversation about what's surrounding the Florida Panthers and how they just carry themselves through the end of the season and what the future is going to look like for this team. So there was a various amount of those questions from you guys sent in when I put the request out for questions. So most of them came from Instagram and one came on YouTube as far as those questions. So let's get right into it. On the first segment, we're going to discuss mostly about the options that the Panthers will have with the first round pick if it were to land top 10 protected. If you want to hear me discuss more of the details on how the Panthers got there, you could listen to Monday's edition. But we are also going to discuss different positions and also especially one position in particular in goaltender. And then in segment number 3, we're going to discuss a little bit about post-Olympic break and then the last 25 games for this Panthers team. So let's get right into it. So one of the questions that I got, I'm going to, obviously, if you submit a question, you're going to get a shout out here on the show. So that's a little bit of an added benefit for you, the listener here. So the first one comes from @MetallicCoaster on Instagram. He says, let's say we retain the pick. Do you use it in the draft or trade it in the offseason? And what I have to say to that, touched on it a little bit yesterday, but what I truly think is that when you have an asset in your system and you have the opportunity to make the pick, I think with the fact that the Panthers farm is as depleted as it is based on the amount that they've already traded out, you at least want to get that pick in your system to at least start. But if something along the lines of an opportunity, especially because of the cap rising and an ability to at least add to possibly a 6th defenseman into your team and maybe even a star goaltender on the rise in a trade, you give yourself that opportunity to possibly trade that pick. And at the same time, you could also season someone in your system, which there are when you're making that pick there inside the top 10, chances are they are more than likely to sign their entry-level deal and get into the mix right away. But the thing is, with the eligibility, which is going to change a little bit as far as who can play in the AHL at a certain age, the fact is, with the Panthers being at least expected to be a contender once again next season, assuming that they're healthy, that draft prospect for the Panthers is not going to be possibly old enough to play in the AHL. So chances are when the Panthers do make that pick, chances are they're going to go to the route of not signing their entry-level deal and send them back to where they may be playing either junior hockey or NCAA because of where the Panthers are in their contending window. So there is that possibility there for the Panthers. So that's really what it comes down to there. And also depending on where they land as well. That is a big factor. But the next question, @Tom_Skibinski, he says, who could the Panthers add with the protected first round pick? And I said mostly on yesterday's show that it's a heavy winger draft mostly and heavy on the defense for the draft. So the top two prospects are Ivar Stenberg from Finland, who plays from Frölunda HC there, who could play on both sides of the wings, and then Gavin McKenna, who actually got his charges dropped at Penn State. So I personally think that the situation that happened between him and that person at the bar in Penn State after their outdoor game, which also Panthers prospect Shea Bush is also part of Penn State hockey team, who he was a 5th round pick in this most recent draft. So I think that the fact that Gavin McKenna can fight, I think that is really more intriguing to general managers more than it is more than it does hurt his stock. But Keaton Verhoff out of the University of North Dakota is one. The best center that the NHL draft does have is Tyron Lawrence out of Boston University. So that's one as far as the higher center to draft, which it depends. Because the Panthers are already strong up the middle with Barkov being under contract until 2030, and I'm expecting for him to sign another deal after that. Sam Bennett, who has clauses, so he's not going to be moved anytime soon, even if his play does drop off. And honestly, once again, you get him for a long playoff run, and those moments there, that's what you pay him for. Yeah, Anton Lundell doesn't have any clauses, but look how impactful he's been for this Panthers team, and how they were the best third line in hockey, and how you don't win a championship without a dominant third line. And that line of him, Luosterainen, and Marchand were such a big difference. So it's either going to be one of the winger spots for the Panthers, or they're going to go defense for them. And again, it's such a strong defense draft. Not only Keaton Verhoff, but Chase Reed out of Michigan State, who was the away team in that outdoor game at Penn State. So there's also Ryan Lynn, who plays for the Vancouver Giants in the WHL. So there's plenty of right-handed shot options. I think that as great as Mike Benning has been in his college career, he's not even playing top pair minutes in the AHL right now for the Charlotte Checkers. So I don't know if he's going to even get an opportunity with the Florida Panthers soon. So, or at all. So it just depends. Miklas Hovorka was the first call up as far as the right side of the defense. He's already been sent back down because they just needed a body most recently after Tobias Bjornfoot got injured in the game before against the Boston Bruins. But I just think that you need to get younger in that. And, if something comes along the line, then I think that it'll be a trade. But I don't think if they have the opportunity right immediately, they're going to get that player in the system. And the next question is, if we somehow, from Z_Bear94, if we somehow get the number 1 overall pick, will anybody believe that it wasn't rigged for us? And listen, a lot of people already think that rules are already rigged for the Florida Panthers based on their hard-nosed play and the fact that the brother of Colin Campbell is Gregory Campbell in the Panthers front office. There's already speculation on it being rigged for the Panthers. I mean, we saw how loud it was for Sam Bennett punching Brad Marchand in the face, him getting in the crease and knocking out Anthony Stolarz as well. So there's also that accusation for it being rigged for the Florida Panthers. It's funny because the Panthers' success as far as the growth of hockey, this is more of a long play for the entirety of the sport. Because if we're being honest, the Panthers aren't the biggest revenue generator for the entirety of the NHL. So if the NHL actually wants certain teams to win because of revenues going up and a rise in the salary cap, then they would want places like a New York or Toronto to actually succeed instead of Florida, because for Florida, they don't get those immediate gains financially as much as those bigger markets. So miss me with that whole thing of it being rigged towards the Panthers. And going back to even the draft recently, they have actually put out the lottery, the actual balls to put the combinations for as recently as the last draft when the New York Islanders fell to number 1 overall. They actually showed what the percentage chance, live odds, ball by ball, of what it was going to look like for X team to land the first overall pick. And I assume that the NHL is going to go that way again. So it's just a tiresome discussion for this team. And it's funny because one of the next question is from @Metallic Coaster again, saying thoughts on the Campbell Parros thing and general favoritism accusations. So that one question led to the other as far as the answer. But George Parros barely spent any time with the Panthers. And also, let's not forget, George Parros also suspended his best friend when he played in the NHL, in Andrew Cogliano, when he was on his way to setting the Ironman record. And he suspended him for 2 games. That affected their friendship. But you got to put integrity in front of friendship at all costs. And I don't think that the people in the league office, because there isn't a possibility for investigations and lawsuits, and is that worth it for the league to lose that and lose the credibility across the different teams across the league and also the fans as well? And I don't know if that's a place that they want to be comfortable in when it comes to saying, hey, because he's a Florida Panther, let's favor them in everything. Based on if the Panthers weren't successful, there wouldn't be these accusations to begin with. But they've won. Tampa Bay has won. And you've seen even recently them getting rewarded for the 2 outdoor games. So that's what's going to happen. And that's how they're trying to expand their horizons. That's what they're trying to do, as opposed to favoring one team. And you know what? Because of the fact that the Panthers window is still open, and the fact that we've already seen a successful Stadium Series game in Tampa, don't be surprised if somewhere along the line we'll see possibly a Stadium Series at Hard Rock Stadium for the Panthers to host the game. So we will see about that. And also, based on favoritism, the 2 Florida teams that hosted the outdoor games, they brought teams from up north to be the road team. So wouldn't it mean that they favored them more than the Florida teams because they're worried about crowds and whether they could fill a stadium? I wanted Battle Florida for the outdoor game, but the NHL cared about ratings more than that for bringing 2 original 6 teams as the road teams for these outdoor games. So again, don't think at all that it's anyway favoritism for this Panthers team and this franchise. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where should the Panthers go goaltender, as far as if they do end up landing inside the top 10 for the draft. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And if you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. You want candidates who truly match what you're looking for. Trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for the show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just resume buzzwords. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend time interviewing candidates to check all the boxes, less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show get a $75 sponsored job credit and help your job get the premium placement it deserves. Indeed.com/locked-on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, doing it the right way with Indeed. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. It's an access to an audio-free for the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, compatible with Apple, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Is an invite to the members-only Locked On Everyday Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for listeners of the show. And tap the link in the show notes to learn more. So, just a little bit of housekeeping here for you guys is I'm still trying to figure out what my recording schedule is going to be with the Olympics based on the timing of the games when they end. It's going to be a marathon of a day for here as we record, and especially when the Panthers aren't playing. I'm usually working evenings as far as not only do I work in sports as far as here on YouTube, but also I do some officiating here as well in the evening. So after the games are over for today, I'm going straight to my other job as far as that. So yeah, it's going to be busy for yours truly, and not a lot of sleep as well. But we're going to try to make it work, and it'll be the times won't be consistent here, as we are currently recording this at the end of the first period between the USA and Canada game for the women's, where USA is currently winning 2-0. So great to see that that USA is getting ahead right now. They're with Canada's without Marie-Philip Poulin right now, but again, this won't be the first time they meet. So I expect them to meet somewhere in like a medal round down the line. So maybe it's short-term pain for long-term gain for Canada. Who knows? But we'll see. But next mailbag question that I got was from our friend from the Hockey Writers, actually, Joey Gansey, who goes by at Sir_Joester on Instagram. He actually asked here, if we land a top 10 pick, do we land a goalie? And here's the thing here. Not only are there no goalies projected in the first round at all, the next goalie to be projected as far as when the first one to be picked is in the late second round right now. And that is projected to go to, actually right now, Tampa Bay is projected to have the 63rd pick. They are projected to draft Tobias Trouble of the Youngstown Phantoms in the USHL, who's going to be going to UMass as well. So as far as some of the mock drafts I've seen, one of them, and here's the thing, for goaltenders, I believe that you draft a goalie every single year until you get a franchise guy. And crazy to think that Sergei Bobrovsky landed in the Panthers' lap as far as free agency, which great idea for Dale Talon to get him when he was already in his prime, coming off 2 Vezina trophies and the biggest upset in NHL history at the time when the Columbus Blue Jackets upset the Tampa Bay Lightning. President's Trophy winners that season, him, Artemi Panarin, Matt Duchene, that crew over there. But even, I mean, they didn't even draft Roberto Luongo. He was a trade that the Panthers made, and they got Ole Jokinen out of that as well. Mark Parrish was part of that trade to New York as far as that, and the Islanders were going with Rick DiPietro, and they don't need to actually draft a goalie in their system to at least make it work neither, especially not in the first round. I think it's a 1% chance that the Panthers would go goaltender if they do land a top 10 pick. And it's a crapshoot. The draft is a crapshoot. You could get goaltenders anywhere in the draft. And one of the projections for the draft, according to Tankathon, is that the Panthers could go, they have the Panthers with the 74th pick right now to draft Dmitry Burashev of the MHL. So a 2008 birthday, and at least gives him an opportunity to at least get in. He's not going to be an immediate signing for his ELC, but it's a name that's added to the mix because the Panthers have had a lot of turnover with their third goaltender as of recent years. And right now, the Panthers goaltenders in Charlotte, as far as that, are Cooper Black and Kirill Gusimchuk, both on entry-level deals. Cooper Black is going to be an RFA this offseason, and then Kirill Gusimchuk is going to be an RFA in 2 years. And that Gusimchuk is actually one that Jacob and I are very high on, coming from Russia. So he is one that is very promising. I mean, we've seen we've also discussed multiple guys who have the Panthers have drafted late in Tyler Muzelik, who went to the University of Connecticut, UConn, played a little bit of time there. And then we've seen turnover with Alex Lyon, who also made a Calder Cup final right before signing with the Panthers, but also has found a way to put lightning in a bottle for himself and has actually made a great career out of it. But you're not going to lose sleep over losing a third goaltender for this Panthers team. Oh, excuse me, as my cat knocked over my microphone. But here's the thing and I know that a lot of people are thinking, oh, Brandon Bussey, he's the one that got away. But listen, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and great teams, it just goes to the product of your system. And with the Panthers having the goalie excellence department that they have, you got to trust that group that they're going to get it right. And you guys want to know how many goaltenders who are first round picks who have won a championship in the last 15 years? How many first round picks were the starting goaltender of a Stanley Cup championship team? Only 2. And only one of them were actually drafted by their team. Andrei Vasilevsky for the Tampa Bay Lightning back in 2012. That 19th overall. That was the year that the Panthers drafted Mike Matheson. Vasilevsky was not even going to get to the Panthers that year in the draft. So, and here are the other picks, are the other goaltenders who have won championships, but where they were selected. Aiden Hill was a 3rd round pick from the Coyotes, won with Vegas. Darcy Kemper, 6th round pick in 2009 by Minnesota. Jordan Binnington, 3rd round pick from St. Louis. Braden Holtby, 4th round pick in 2008. Matt Murray, 3rd round pick. Corey Crawford, 2nd round pick. Same draft actually as Duncan Keith. So they got a franchise defenseman and a goaltender in that same draft for Chicago. Jonathan Quick, 3rd round pick. And then the last one before Vasilevsky was Tuukka Rask. But Tuukka Rask wasn't drafted by the Boston Bruins. He was actually drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he was actually traded for a goaltender who won the Calder Trophy in Andrew Raycroft. Andrew Raycroft didn't last in Toronto after that trade. And then Sergei Bobrovsky, an undrafted goalie. The last undrafted goalie to win a championship, actually, was former Panther Antti Niemi with the Chicago Blackhawks. So it's hit and miss about where these goaltenders land and if the systems are great around them. And I do believe that based on Sergei Bobrovsky's level of play in the playoffs these last few years, a lot of it has been contributed to an outstanding blue line as well. You need that help along with it. That's why if it's anywhere between 5 to 10 for the Panthers, blue line is the priority over goaltender by a long shot here. So that is where my head is at based on looking at the draft. And if you land number 1 or 2, you got to go BPA, best player available. Yeah, McKenna and Ivan Stenberg, you go for that and then figure it out later, the rest, because there's going to be, the cap is going to open up. There's an opportunity to at least use the contracts of an Evan Rodriguez and Jesper Boquist for them in order to at least get additional defense help on the back end to at least for a 6th D. So that's another asset that the Panthers could use as far as using that to at least improve their chances of a 3rd championship, even if it's not this year. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss more about the Panthers and some of the players that were asked about how I think they will perform in the Olympics. We'll discuss that next here on Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor. And cold days, packed schedules, and big goals. That's winter. And there's not a lot of time to cook. Eating well can feel like another thing on the to-do list. That's where Factor comes in. Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, so you can eat well without the planning, prepping, or cooking. Factor meals are always fresh, never frozen, and ready in about 2 minutes. Factor's ingredients stand out: lean proteins, colorful veggies, and whole foods and healthy fats. No refined sugars, artificial sweeteners, or refined seed oils. Ton of variety with 100 meals each week. It never gets boring. Options like high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and even new muscle pop collection for strength and recovery. Head to factormeals.com/lockedon NHL50 off and use code lockedon NHL50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. One free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active. Third and final segment here on this Tuesday, February 10th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. And continuing the mailbag questions today is that at Anthony A. Bennis 23 asks, would we be able to make the playoffs after the Olympic break? And let me actually open a tab real quick to see where Money Puck has the Panthers' chances. I believe it was in the 20s last time I checked. Right now, it's 15.3% of the chances that the Panthers have to make the postseason. So highly unlikely. But this team has no quit in them, so they are going to attempt to try to make it. And you know what? We hope that the Panthers are going to come back healthy. But at the same time, Sam Reinhart doesn't practice for this team. I mean, even at this point last year, Matthew Tkachuk was only dressing for games after the injury in the Four Nations, and the Panthers, thankfully, they created enough of a cushion to at least get themselves in a position for the postseason. And with the old cap rules, you were able to fit everyone in. And I've said, I remember on an episode a few weeks ago with David Dwork, where I was saying, in order to activate Seth Jones and others, and Jonah Gadjevich is expected to be back with the team, as he was practicing in a regular jersey and not in a non-contact jersey. And they would have to make a few trades, including putting guys on waivers and then having to be a body short. But Brad Marchand's hobbled as well. And with Reinhart not practicing, Marchand hobbled as well, they might not have to trade those guys to begin with, as far as Jesper Boquist and or Evan Rodriguez, to create the cap room to fit an actual roster and put it all together. So the Panthers can kick the can down the road this offseason. So that is kind of the luxury of the silver lining as far as the injuries, because you're not saying goodbye to certain guys and they don't get to move their own stuff for a whole year. Evan Rodriguez has multiple kids. They get to at least grow up a little bit in this area, and that matters. The family aspect off the ice matters. You're not going to, and I don't think they're going to go straight for selling guys off with one with them, because it kind of sends a wrong message to the locker room about, oh, does the front office not believe in us? That matters as well as guys who have won, who has contracts expiring this offseason. I think you got to think about the family aspect of it and the culture. And culture, once again, is this team powering through, even when they don't have a lot of gas left in the tank as of right now. Next question is from VE_Junior. What's your prediction for Uvis/Sandis and Team Latvia? And I want to say congratulations to Uvis Balinskis, by the way, who's been named an alternate captain for Team Latvia. I'm not expecting the Latvia to get a medal, but it's a country that's really developing in hockey. And even the fact that they were one of the top teams a few years ago in the World Championships. We saw a big celebration just for that team alone. And remember, World Championships is how Uvis Balinskis got on the NHL stage to begin with. And credit to the scouting department for discovering him and bringing him along. Let's not forget that in the 2022 Olympics, Petteri Lindbaum for Team Finland had a great performance, and the Panthers signed him through the rest of the regular season. He wasn't extremely impactful. He didn't play too many games, but that was a dart to throw at the dartboard that the Panthers could have used, that they used at the time to try to see what they had. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's going to be someone from these Olympic Games that the Panthers are going to look at and it's like, maybe we can sign them to a contract. Who knows? There. So we will see. So next question from the YouTube is at not actually Barkov. He says, with 25 games remaining of the season, do you think it's best that the Panthers make the push for the playoffs or take the time to rest the players for next season and be healthy? Not necessarily tank, but maybe by the end of the season, they'll be in a good position to be somewhere in the top 10 of the draft. Which team is your pick to win Olympic gold for men's hockey? He also asks another question. Well, I kind of already answered that one. As far as the mindset of the Panthers, their mindset is always going to be to win for this team. If they do finish 11-15, great. Because, even though that would transition to Chicago, but again, it sends a message of not backing down. But if it's the last game of the season and that game is to secure top 10 lottery odds, then I'll say, okay, let's cheer for a loss here for this Panthers team. But with through 57 games, there's just so much left. Not necessarily left as far as in to make the playoffs, because I think that's really unlikely. But I just want to see the team play well. I want to see them fight for each other. That's what I want to see. You know what? There might be those decisions that and here's the thing, actually, before I get there. Bill Zito's not going to, I don't think Bill Zito is going to just hit up Paul Maurice and just say, hey, we want to secure a pick in the draft, like rest some guys. But at the same time, I think Paul Maurice, because he's a player's coach, he's going to think about what's best for that player and if their body is telling them no as well. So I think that is a possibility as far as thinking about their health and thinking, is this worth with all the mileage added, especially the ones coming from the Olympics as well, because that a lot of players are getting rest, but again, 10 players going to the Olympics for this team. So it's I wouldn't be surprised if there's a long losing streak after the fact. And you know what? That helps the Panthers as far as the draft lottery odds. But if they go on a 5-game winning streak and are pushing for the postseason, I'm not going to be mad about that neither, because postseason hockey means we get to at least have the possibility of seeing an upset, because no one wants to see that Florida Panthers team on the other side. And for the second question, who's my pick to win Olympic gold for men's hockey? I'm not telling you that right now. We are going to wait until Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where we'll bring in Jacob Winans and we will have an actual Olympic preview of the games. Yeah, I did say my thoughts on Latvia, but as far as the breaking down every where the Florida Panthers will be, as far as where they're lined up, and as far as talking about groups and predictions, we're going to save that for tomorrow's show. But thank you guys, as always, for listening. Thank you guys for sending me your mailbag questions and giving me the opportunity to answer, even if I've said a few of them already and covered them in previous episodes. I just want to give an opportunity to at least double down on some of my thoughts here on where the Panthers should go. But thank you guys, as always, for listening. Be on the lookout for certain shows. Make sure you're subscribing, because the recording schedule is very different throughout these next few weeks. So make sure to be on the lookout for every episode then. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.